The physios need to be ready. They need lozenges. They need tea with honey. They're going to need a humidifier because when we look at the fixture list and there are 10 games in the next 36 days, I think what everybody's thinking is the same. Won't you please spare a thought for the podcasters? This is the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can bot me on Twitter, Ink Gunner. Yeah. How am I supposed to do power rankings, EVP, one club, data review, SCAC, instant reaction, scouting video, rewatch when we play every 3.6 days for the next 36 days? That's right, 10 games in 36 days before there are 20 days off Premier League action as the FA Cup returns, and I believe there may be a little bit of a footballing break, actually. So there's a lot that has to be accomplished, not just as podcasters, but also as Arsenal Football Club in the next 36 days. I do want to just take a moment to say, and I know not everybody celebrated Thanksgiving who's listening to this podcast. In fact, many of you may not even know what it is, but it is a family holiday in the U.S. to get together and just eat a lot of food. And, it is a day to express that you're thankful for people and grateful for people and things. So I do want to express my sincere, deep gratitude to everybody listening, for you, for this community, for being a part of my life in a very special way and a part of the lives of the people I get to podcast with, and thankful for my fellow podcasters who have become dear friends. For Andrew, who is a dear friend, I want to say just thank you to everybody and express my gratitude. And I hope if you did celebrate Thanksgiving that you had a wonderful time with your family. And for anybody going through hardship or difficult times, I wish you well through them. And then I hope you find your way out to smoother sailing and clearer skies on the other end. So gratitude and love from everyone here at the podcast. And with that, I will turn it over to Clive, who you can find on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good day. Good family day. Are you full up?
Yeah. Ate lots of food. My parents were here. My brother and sister-in-law and their kids were here. We have a puppy. So it was just total chaos. But there's always enough food and booze to make the chaos blur into the background as you stare at your waistline growing and then pass out, somewhere around the house at an hour that's far too early for sleep. So yeah, that's
my
roughly it.
Waistline's been growing for years, mate. Don't worry about it. Just let it go.
Well, it's moments like this that help me catch up. So that's what I was endeavoring to do. I do want to let you know we tried out a new concept, and I think by and large people liked it. We did something called EVP, Elliot versus Paul, sort of a debate show idea. But the idea being, what if we take some topics that people have been saying, we want you to talk about this in the mailbag episodes and stuff for a while, and just debate both sides of them. But the wrinkle on it is, instead of letting us just retreat to our priors or our biases, we picked who had to defend what side at random. So we took on the question of Kai Havertz, his performances so far this season. And we took on the question of Mikel Arteta as a attacking coach. Can Mikel Arteta coach an attack, right? Two questions we've been getting a lot in the mailbag, and we debated it. Back and forth in a friendly way, but we're trying to make the fullest, strongest argument we could on both sides. I think people really liked it. Also felt that there are some kinks to work out with me flipping a coin, which turns out I'm not very good at, but that's something we did over on the Patreon that you might like. And it literally, by the time you listen to this, the part 2 of the data review, the one that I think people even actually look forward to more, the individual player data section of the data review should be out. So if you're hearing my voice right now, that's probably already out. And if you'd like to join us over there, we'd love to have you over there. We have a Black Friday special running. Here's what it is. If you listen to this free podcast today, we will do another free podcast on Monday. And if you sign up for Patreon, we will let you listen to all the Patreon episodes. It's a stunning Black Friday offer that you can only get here at the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. Okay, let's get on with it. There are 10 games in 36 days. So a couple of things we're going to talk about. We will do a little preview of Manchester City versus Liverpool because it's a big topic. We're going to obviously preview the Brentford game first and talk team news. We might talk multi-club vote a bit. And the fact that it looks like there's some news that we might be signing David Raya. Ironically, that news breaking on the eve of Ramsdale getting his first Premier League start in quite some time. So a lot of stuff that we can get to. Let's start just with the basic team news. And Clive, I stayed up late to watch a delayed Brazil-Argentina game. It was not a good game. It was not a good game of football. There wasn't much football played. It was a very aggressive game, as you'd expect, between those two rivals, but really more violence in the stands and on the pitch than there was football played. And sort of unfortunate. And I think it's one of those games that you just say, thank goodness our players came through it. Yeah. Gabriel Magalhaes was subbed off as Brazil chased the game. Martinelli was subbed off, although I think he was their brightest player. Could have potentially given them the lead from a Jesus assist from a nice driving run.
I saw that.
Martinelli had a nice nutmeg and run down the line. He looked very involved, very lively. I thought Jesus had cameos, moments where he sparkled, and other moments where he struggled to get into a game that was, again, just a lot of broken play. Denise, I believe is how you say his name, his football emphasizes counterattacks and transitions. And because of all the fouling, there was just no flow in the game. So the good news is they got their minutes, and Jesus played 96 minutes in a physical game. As Mikel Arteta said, he's eligible to play, but he's just taken a long flight back and only had one training session. So when you look at maybe those players in particular, Odegaard back in contention, Ben White back in contention, Jesus back in contention, would you go for all of them right away at Brentford? One of the tougher fixtures we'll have all season, I think.
11-hour flight back from Brazil. Very tough game, very physical game, very emotional game. Brazil lost a home World Cup qualifier for the first time. I'm not sure, it may even be ever. So I'm not even sure if that's correct, but in a long time. So you can imagine the emotion coming out in the press and how that's going to drain on our players. 3 starters, and this Brazil team lacks the relationships that it needs, and that's what Denise focuses on. So now back amongst the Arsenal family, we will see, right? They trained inside on Thursday, as you listen, and they're out on the pitch today, which we don't know about because the inside training video is out this morning, and that was done for yesterday. So quite cleverly, press conference 9:30 this morning, UK time. Of course, he cannot answer all the team questions, so we end up with as much opaqueness as we had yesterday. So, and that's the way he does it. Don't give anybody an advantage. But Jesus did play over 90 minutes in the week, and I didn't see it, Elliot, but we have a player that's now back, and when you look at those stretch of games ahead, and I know I'm talking to an open door here with you. When you look at those games ahead, I can't help but get excited by the fact that he'll be playing in the majority of them. We hope. Right? But given what Trossard has done, do we need to play him from the start in this game? And is that wise, given the fact that I think he's only started 2 or 3 Premier League games. We want him now, don't we? We have a stretch of games where we really do need his ability. And I just think I would go slightly cautious, but again, we're not there watching. Martinelli, again, he done his hamstring at Everton on the back of an international break. So, and then we lost him for a while until the City game at half-time, which caused problems with Brazil, which we're still paying for. Gabriel never gets to sit down, and not likely to until the Champions League. If we qualify it, then he maybe gets to sit down then. But again, if we do well and we're efficient in front of goal, then maybe we can get him off the pitch, but we never seem to be able to do that. So yeah, I just think we just need to focus on the next thing. And I do think one player, I'm not sure if you mentioned him, sorry if I missed it, but I am excited to see Odegaard come back in.
Yep.
I think we have short memories, and let's be honest, the guy plays most of the games, and when he plays and he plays well, we look like an Arsenal team. He controls us. Tactically. He controls us technically. He tells us when to sit. He leads the press. He's our technical leader on the pitch, and we quickly forget him, because he hasn't been there for a while. But when he's back and he's good, then we all remember. And I think we will not be able to see anybody else on the screen if he's back playing well. And I look forward to that.
Yeah. And I look at the way the fixtures break, and it's at Brentford, then home to Lens, home to Wolves, at Luton, before we go to Villa. And it's a tough one because while I totally understand potentially wanting to ease back the Brazilian contingent, especially Gabriel Jesus, if I had to pick one of those 4 at Brentford, home to Lens, home to Wolves, at Luton, to have Jesus available for, this would be it. This is going to be
Good point.
Our toughest game, in my view, of that run, that little mini run before we go to Villa. I'm
to that point,
inclined
Elliot,
to
Brentford have only lost 2 of 22 home league games, and one was to us and one was to Newcastle. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a decent record against them since that loss on the opening day of the season when Carragher and Neville were suddenly huge Brentford fans and dancing, with their fans when they had just come up from the championship. But yeah, they've been a very, very solid team. They are coming off the back of a 3-0 loss that was a little more balanced than the scoreline at Liverpool. But to your point, when you look at how they've done home and away, they've been very good at home. And you'd think they would miss Tony, but they've had players that have stepped up, and Buemo's been good. I think the question really, I think, focuses around Gabriel Jesus. The more data comes out, the more analysis of the team comes out, the more we look at any stats. There's been stats about our ball progression going around. There's been stats about where our shots are coming from, where our chance creation is coming from, and you just start to see there's this giant hole in the center of the pitch in the attacking third. And it feels like it's just begging for Jesus to be there. So I would be inclined to risk it. I think I would. He didn't play against Colombia in the international break. He played against Argentina. And, maybe that makes him more ready. One of the things we tend to do is think, oh, he played, he can't play again. But sometimes, when you've been out for a while, playing is actually the thing that makes you more fit to play again. Because you've had the experience of starting a match and playing from the start and going 90 minutes. And I think he looked like he came through it just fine. So depending on how he looks in training, I don't know, Clive. I think this game of the next run of four, this is the one where points can very easily be dropped. And in a weekend where Liverpool and City play each other and one or both potentially drop points, I think it's such a critical time to keep pace. I think I'd risk him.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I do think we have to, with these amount of games kind of literally every 3 or 4 days, whatever happens, they're all going to play. And that's the truth, because they're going to end games. If they either start games, they're going to end games. And I do think we're going to see, I think with my starting 11 head on, Trossard deserves a start. He's done really, really well. Well, Trossard's going to play. Martinelli's going to play. Jesus is going to play. It's just what part of the game they're going to play and what the game model is and how we want to play him. And how we want to play will dictate who plays. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen yet. Now, we can't help but think about getting our best players on the pitch. And the best players on the pitch are the ones that give us the best memories, right? And attacking memories. But, Trossard has given us something in recent weeks that I think, he's shown a real level of execution and end product. And so I think he deserves to play this game. Maybe Martinelli's the one that maybe struggles coming back from Brazil, and that's when he picked up his injury. Maybe Martinelli's the one that sits for an hour, then comes on late. Or does Trossard come on late? I don't really mind. We seem stronger than before the international break with availability, and that's really key. I think we're all excited and expectant that once the personnel is back, we're going to see the attacking Arsenal being back. And so we're wish casting them into the team. I look forward to seeing some more relationships and combinations develop that we seem to have lost. But I also recognise that we're 1 point off the top with a team that looks very not similar to last year at all in style and availability. And so the good days are ahead, one step at a time. This first game is really key. The Saturday morning game, Liverpool City, will just dictate how everyone feels. So you imagine those away fans, right, down at Brentford, in the pubs watching the City game. It'd be a long day if they are. In the pubs watching the City game and then rolling into the ground for our game. It's going to be fantastic, if that goes well. And the players will do the same thing. And that will change the mood. That will change the psychology. It feels this week, Elliot, that we are almost invisible, apart from disciplinary stuff. We're invisible from a footballing side of things because there's the other big game going on. And it's just like Arsenal just don't really matter. We just need to sort their manager out, thanks. Can we just get them into some sort of shape? Don't worry about, also disciplinary stuff happening at Everton is another angle. But yeah, we're not the flavour of the month at the moment, and we just have to wear it. But keep winning games, trust me, that'll change.
Mikel's been speaking about his disciplinary charge. You probably won't find out anything about it this game. I imagine shortly after this game, he'll find out that he's been suspended, is my guess, from the touchline. There'll be some touchline ban, is just what I'm expecting them to do. Now, the irony, of course, is they have not charged De Zerbi, who said, I don't like 80% of the English referees. It feels a lot more pointed. Mikel was asked if he would go back and do it differently. I thought his answer was interesting. He was like, it's like a lineup, when it goes poorly after the game, you wonder, should this guy have passed to that guy or should I have picked this guy? You'd always like to do things differently. That's not how the world works. You do the best you can in the moment, based on what you're feeling, and you live with it. It sounded a little bit maybe like regret. I mean, I didn't hear it, unfortunately. I
No.
only read it, so I don't know the tone. But I'm curious, like, how you feel about, first of all, the fact that De Zerbi hasn't been charged, and if maybe that leniency suggests that there should be some leniency in terms of what's dished out to Mikel, because I do think saying you don't like 80% of English referees is a lot more pointed than taking issue with a decision, you know?
Yeah, it's all about your starting point, and the starting point is with Arsenal seems to be dictated by Sky TV and the various radio channels. Right, that's the truth of it. And if certain people don't like the cut of our jib, they're going to talk about it all the time. And after
Yep.
Arteta's comments, I'm afraid we were all over the news in every single way but form. The Daily Mail have started a campaign now about respecting referees on the back of this, and Arteta's the poster boy. They're trying to attack, right? So it's just where I'm deserving. I'll say no one cares because he's a brilliant coach, as you know, and very influential. But no one cares about Brighton. They're not going to move them. They're not going to move the engagement needle. They're not going to get different hits on websites and get people watching Sky. But Arsenal are, and that's the truth of it. On the back of the Chelsea City game, Pochettino stormed onto the pitch, had to be held back from verbally attacking the referee. Yep. No drama. He's a passionate guy. I don't dislike Poch, to be fair. He's a passionate guy. That's who he is. That's what Arteta said. He said, "This is who I am. I've got to be authentic to myself," and that's all you can be, Elliot.
Yep.
It's all you can be. And for all of us, right? Just be true to yourself, and that's who he is. He must not change for people that are not like him. What are they bringing to the show? He's trying to do something extraordinary, which is go against oil state clubs and people with serious money in their back pockets. He's trying to do something, and I am so behind him, because when we got done at Brentford, so in the with the no lines, I didn't see the big anger coming out of the club. I didn't see it. It was obviously disappointing, but I didn't see a visceral response. And it's just the way it is. And I don't want to be bitter about this and tribal about this. In the end, that's the role that we've been given in the story of the Premier League. That's the actor we are. So let's just focus on what we can control, which is how we play and what we do on the pitch. And that's the only way you change people's opinions, if you so seek to do that. And I'm starting to care less about doing that.
Yeah, I'll admit that from a distance, I don't mean a distance in terms of caring, but I mean a literal distance where I'm not immersed in some of the sports journalism news cycle, where it's just not on like noise in the background all the time. I think this focus on touchline behavior and managerial comments is just bizarre. I mean, we're grown-ups. We're grown-ups. There's so many worse things in football that we're exposed to. And, I understand that there should be a certain degree of respect, of course. But, I mean, this is big-time sport with big-time things on the line. And if a manager is animated on the touchline, who cares? Like, that's just part of the spectacle. I mean, if a manager says some pointed comments about a decision that clearly turned a game, that should be expected. It should be expected. And I understand, there's always this. I feel like anytime anyone wants to clamp down on behavior, their default is, won't someone think of the children? Please think of the children playing youth football. What are they? And I get it, right? When they see their favorite managers or their favorite players do a certain thing, then they do that certain thing and it all filters down. But ultimately, like, come on. I think there are a lot of things that football can work on improving in the image they project to the youth and to society that are outside of managers' behavior. So to me, from the outside looking in, Clive, it is a tempest in a teacup kind of thing. And I feel Mikel has to be Mikel, and damn the league and their rules committee. They could do whatever the hell they want,
Yeah, it's a spectacle, football. It's an event. It's an absolute event. Sometimes we go to the Emirates, you go early, you can see the show developing, see all the activities going on around it. I remember when Tuchel and Conte had that handshake thing. Remember that? It's funny, man.
Hilarious.
Let it go. It's really good fun. We can have a laugh about it. Who cares? Seriously, who cares? It's good laugh. It's not one of our teams. If Mikel Arteta loses his rag for 5 minutes, who cares? And I watch these press conferences, Elliot. I don't just listen to them, I watch them all religiously. And I watch him and I watch his composure and I look at his tone and he is in total control. He is not bothered. The press guys are they know he's in control. They respect him, the guys on the Arsenal beat. They respect him. They ask him the questions. There's lots of smiles. The quotes may look slightly different, but trust me, there's no drama in that room. He's not struggling to hold that room. He's not struggling to hold his role in the club. He's only going one way and it's up. And all these people trying to chip back at him don't have a clue about the guy's stature and where he's going. They haven't got a clue. He is proper elite, mate. Properly. He's not without making mistakes, but this is not your average guy. You know, this is not your average guy. And we just need to make sure that we continue on this path to make sure that those sort of that praise I've given him actually comes true, right? Because I believe he is that good.
And maybe I'm going a little too far afield here, but also one thing to bear in mind, Mikel Arteta is a young guy in his first coaching job. What's his first managerial job? Not first coaching job, first managerial job. What's his first job he gets? A big club, a giant club, an English club, right? This Spanish guy who comes to England, whose first job in management is managing Arsenal Football Club. And he's young, he's got his hair, and he's good. And I just think there's a lot of resentment. I mean, I don't know Gary Neville, but Gary Neville failed at this. Neville failed at this. He didn't get Arsenal. He didn't get Manchester United. He didn't get Liverpool as his first club. He tried to work his way up and he failed at it. And there's a lot of former players who have failed at trying to do this. A lot of former players who couldn't do it at all, or former managers who are in the punditocracy now, who had to work their way up, struggle from the bottom, start in third division in Norway, and ultimate. And you know what? Maybe there's an argument that Arsenal was too big, too much, too soon for Mikel. But I think if you look at it, he clearly has what it takes. And I think there's resentment there. And I do think that the idea that this young Spaniard can come to England and take over one of the titanic clubs of English football at a young age as his first job. I'm sorry, Clive. I'm sure there's some resentment around that from people who paid their dues and couldn't do it. You know
what? I've never thought that angle before. And as you were talking, I'm thinking, you know what? You make a really good point. And not only that, and I look at the way they chip away at him, and he's Pep's cone man. Do you know what I mean? Straight away, he's just a mini Pep. So what you've done, you put a ceiling on him straight away. You put a ceiling on him, and when he fights through that ceiling, then it becomes, well, look how much money he spent. Do you see what I mean? It's like, how can I put a ceiling around him? Because he keeps exceeding our expectations. Rather than, the Man City 1-0, I think it could have been a 0-0, easily. Could have been a 0-0 game. But we were in charge of that game. We were accelerating towards the end of that game, shall I say. And we won that game. And statistically and data-wise, Elliot, that game is a proper game. Right? What we were able to do with them is big stuff. Right? Big stuff. No Saka in our team. They had no De Bruyne and no Rodri. So he wasn't the full metal jacket, shall we say, of both teams. However, it was an amazing occasion about how you can coach your way to nullifying an exceptional side. Very little credit for it. Very little credit for it. It's just like first time you beat them 15 occasions, about time. We beat them twice this year. Very little credit for it. We're on the right track. We just got a bit more to do around central progression, a bit more attacking play. I know where you're going. Personnel related, Clive's thinking, that personnel's coming back soon. Then what are you going to say, Clive? I can't wait for that.
Well, hopefully it's going to fix it.
Exactly. Hopefully it'll fix it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see the ball flipping down the middle to Odegaard, him turning around and people running off in the distance, showing him his shorts, you got 2 or 3 through balls to choose. What are you going to do, son? I look forward to that. And that's in our club. It's in our club, contracted, all between the ages of 22 and 25. All in our club, ready to go. Couple more contracts coming in, Ben White and Tommy Yasu. All contracted. We have a 2 to 4 year window to do some big stuff.
Yep.
And we just need to stay behind it.
Yeah. And we just assume players will get better and better, but somehow we assume managers won't. I mean, again, Mikel Arteta's a few years into his career at this. So, he may get better. And it's funny, you talk about resentment. I remember when Arsene Wenger was doing Project Youth, and you'd see these cloggers, these career cloggers, like Dan Smith, who saw a young talent like Abu Dhabi do a few tricks and flicks and said, no, I'm not having that, right? And we saw it happen to Eduardo, and we saw it happen to Ramsey, and we saw it happen to Diaby, right? These young virtuoso talents and these career cloggers who went in two-footed. And I wonder if there's a little bit of two-footedness going on in the way Mikel's treated as a young man who's been given a very prestigious job to start his career. More onto the stuff that matters, the footballing side of it. And yeah, we do have players coming back, including Aaron Ramsdale. Aaron Ramsdale will start against Brentford. And he was asked in the press conference, if he has an amazing game and saves a couple of penalties, will he start the next game? And Mikel was like, well, I hope he doesn't have to save a couple of penalties, but I hope he has a great game. I think it's fair to say that we've looked at this game from a distance for a while to say, is this Ramsdale's chance to get back in? I think now we can really see there is no chance to get back in. There's some news that Fabrizio Romano went with that we've decided to pick up the option to buy Raya. And it all points to me to the future being Raya. What do you think of Ramsdale coming back in, how he'll be viewing this, and the likelihood, or should say unlikelihood, that the performance is going to make much difference in terms of what happens from here?
I can't read this goalkeeper thing anymore, mate. Maybe the simplest read is the one that Tim had way before, that basically after the international break, Raya will come in and that'll be it. And I didn't want to believe it, and so, but
sure looks like it.
It sure looks like it, right? So that's where I am. I was hoping that Ramsdale would get an England game, to be honest, but he didn't get that England game. I don't know why we had to sit there watching Jordan Pickford in both games. If he got that England game, then I think it'd have just been a bit sharper for this game. The West Ham game didn't go so well for the team, and he was a victim of that as well. In the other Brentford game, I thought he was excellent, really, really good. He was excellent for England before he got dropped for Arsenal, and I hope going back to Brentford he has a good performance. From an Arsenal perspective, it looks as though he's not going to be around for next season. That's based on what you read. I hope he wants to fight it out. But I just hope if he does want to fight it out, I hope he gets a chance to play. There was data before, recently pre-season, because he was the PFA goalkeeper of the season last year. Talk about Ramsdale being the most expensive goalkeeper in the world, based on contract and age and experience, etc. He sure doesn't feel like that at the moment. It feels like we forget things very quickly. Suddenly, he's not getting the team. I don't want him to lose value for the club. He's a homegrown goalkeeper, 25 years of age, could easily be England's number one, easily, if he gets the right move, or he gets time at Arsenal. And I don't want to see him just become devalued. We seem to do this quite a lot. When players fall out of favour, they just drop like a stone. And other players get dropped, and it's just not like the end of the world. People still get value for them. So if we are going to move him on, I hope he finds the right club. Because I think he's a great guy. I hope he finds the right club. But deep down, there's enough games at Arsenal for him to play if he's given a fair chance. But maybe that's me being naive, and I'm open to that criticism because I want them both to succeed at our club. But all the actions are saying I'm completely wrong on this, which is a shame for me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the hard thing, right? Not everybody, that's the wrong way to say it. I think plenty of people recognized that there might be an opportunity to upgrade at keeper. And I was clear on this in the summer. I didn't feel it was a priority. I certainly didn't think it was a place that major resources should go given other needs we had, that I still think we have, by the way, and did not address. But it was a market opportunity. We covered it as such in the summer, and it made sense to go for that market opportunity. But I think there's a point here that's not being missed because people have brought it up, but I think being missed now, which is Raya was the guy they wanted before they went for Ramsdale.
Yeah, I remember.
Sometimes there's a guy you want and you don't get him at the first time of asking, but you never stopped thinking that was the guy. Ramsdale came in and really connected to us But it was Raya that this group wanted before they wanted Ramsdale. And he became available in a very attractive way. And maybe Ramsdale was the compromise they made when they couldn't get Raya, and maybe it always felt like a compromise to them. And no matter how connected we felt to him, they never felt fully connected because it wasn't the guy they wanted. The guy they wanted was Raya.
I think,
Clive?
Ramsdale gave us a fantastic season last year, and we all went to an emotional place last year, right? I call it first date season, right? It was a lovely first date, and basically, I've still got some of that feeling in me, right? But every now and again, when we have this break, there's lots of studying, and there's loads of good comps going around, and there's a comp going around of David Raya, about a 10-minute version, and when you're watching him without the errors, shall we say. This is about principles of play. This is about how we want to play. This is purely a principle discussion about how we want to play, how aggressive we want to be, where we play. It is literally at times like having an extra player on the pitch, and a coach cannot turn away from that principle. So I had to wipe my mind, like I've been telling people to do for last season. Clear your mind. Don't worry about how you feel about a player. Worry about how we play and the principle by which we can play. The more tools we have in our toolbox now because we got Raya in our team. Yes, he's waved a couple of crosses in, without a doubt. He has. He's waved a couple in, far too aggressive on his front post. He doesn't need to when there's no traffic around him. That's an adjustment he can make. But the guy can play. He can play. And data-wise, Elliot, the world you live in, he's killing it. He's killing it. Emotionally, yeah, I'm not quite 100% there, but I'm not dumb. I can look at the pitch and see what we're doing. I go, okay, this is a bit different. And more importantly, how I feel when we're doing it, I don't feel racked with nerves, right? And this is going to improve as relationships are built in our back four and our back three, etc. And as we work him out and we have different targets and we have more consistency in our attacking play, it's going to improve. He's 28 years of age. He's homegrown keeper. We can see we got 4 or 5 years of this, and we'll be fine. We'll be absolutely fine.
I hate to say this. There is a possibility that neither Ramsdale nor Raya are the answer.
Yeah,
Keepers
absolutely.
are a weird thing. I mean, I loved Aaron Ramsdale, in terms of the connection we made with him. And again, I said in the summer, I didn't think we need to prioritize upgrading Ramsdale. But I think, first of all, the data was clear. There was an opportunity to upgrade. But where I started to lose Ramsdale, where he started to lose me a bit, as I've always said, was under the most intense pressure. Ramsdale, I think, gave up our principles of play and started going long. And we saw that too many times. There were too many games.
I have to argue this on this point. Going long is not bad. Going long inaccurately.
Right. Going long accurately or actually finding an Arsenal play.
That's what I want to say.
Just hoofing it. There were too many times.
If we are set up to go long, that's absolutely fine. In fact, I want us to go long on occasions. I want to miss out the traffic. Right?
Going long is one of Raya's strong suits. I mean,
exactly.
Raya to Tony was really the whole thing for Brentford last season.
And one of the things, and they're still going long today, even without Tony. However, going long's not the end of the world. Just control is the key, Elliot. Control and how the pressure you feel around going back towards your goalkeeper. I haven't enjoyed us going backwards consistently. I haven't. I've said it. But I also recognise this is bigger than just that phase of game. It's about where we're going over the medium to long term.
I guess what I'd wonder with Ramsdale is like if he was a stony-faced German, like Leno was, how would we just look at him objectively in terms of performance? He had some big games where he made tons of saves. You know who did that as well? Leno. Leno was a really good shot stopper for us, by and large. Ramsdale had some key errors that hurt us. He had some games where he saved us. His passing, I think, was okay at times and less okay at other times. And Raya's come in and I think sort of been the same. First of all, what's interesting about trying to evaluate Raya, we have seen Ramsdale play for an Arsenal whose defense collapsed, and he had to be effective as a keeper. I don't think Raya's been in goal at any point this season where we've allowed more than about 3 or 4 shots.
So we have no idea. And I was quite surprised to see him make a save. I think he made a couple of saves. And it's like, Yeah, so it's been a different challenge. So we can talk about the passing challenge, the footballing challenge.
Mhm.
We're not talking about the tipping over the bar challenge. Do you know what I mean? Or the save that Ramsdale made at Spurs
Yeah.
from Sessegnon. Major save, right? And
Or second half at Anfield,
yeah,
where he just goes supernova and keeps us in a game. That's what I think makes it hard too, is like, look, I've said this before. Connecting emotionally to players is important. And wanting players at your club you like is important. You know what I mean? Like, I understand why people love Bukayo Saka. I understand why they love Emil Smith Rowe. And I understand why they may not feel that way about guys that come from Chelsea, for example. So it's okay to connect to players and want to see those players succeed. And I can understand if you're like, this was a huge mistake psychologically for the team. The interesting thing for me is I can see that there was an opportunity to upgrade on Ramsdale. I'm just
yeah,
not sure we've seen it yet. So
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
very much an uncertain future. But what I would ask you just finally on this, with respect to the game in front of us tomorrow, I I mean, I wouldn't want to be Ramsdale in this moment. Let's put it that way, because it feels like your whole Arsenal career now comes down to this one opportunity to start a Premier League game. And you have to prove that you can keep everything out of your net, stop every cross, make every pass perfectly. I worry that he won't be able to just play his game. That the psychological approach to this game is going to be difficult. So what do you expect? What do you think that's like? Because it feels like too much scrutiny on a single performance facing him for this game.
Yeah, that's the tunnel that we live in. It does feel like that. And remember the Brentford League Cup game? I felt for him because he had to play in that game. Of course, it's to Raya's old club, and he played really, really well. We win the game, so he can stick two fingers up to the
Mm-hmm.
people behind him in the goal. But
Mm-hmm.
he's back there again, with less confidence, shall we say, less of a role, a more defined role as a second choice. And it's like, it's like going back to an old job, but you've gone back there a couple levels down. Not that I've ever done that. But people, we used to be the guy who's the director. Now you're senior vice president. What's all that about? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's
Mm-hmm.
happened? It's like, yeah, it must be a little bit embarrassing.
He
However,
does thrive with the when he has the hostility and the ability to engage with the fans. So in a way, I almost feel like it being an away game is better for him, just in terms of who he is psychologically. And
yeah.
they'll probably be shit David Raya. You're just a shit David Raya, like being sung at him. And I wonder if that will actually, work for him.
Well, when people want to chip away at you, right, they take things out of context. And he said many, many times that he has to fight for concentration. And what he does is he uses a connection with people to make sure he stays completely on his edge. If I'm giving them stick, I ain't going to let nothing go past me. And that's how he finds his competitive elite edge. But when you want to kill somebody, you say, oh, he's told everybody that he struggles with concentration. Let's just take that bit, shall we? Let's take
Mm.
that bit. Let's forget what he's achieved in his career. How many minutes he's played as a 25-year-old. Let's forget that. Let's forget he's played for England. Let's forget he's played for a top six club like Arsenal. He's had 2 relegations and he's bounced back from it. So he must have some sort of mentality and some sort of concentration levels. We'll forget all that and then we'll just kill him. That's the life we live in. And I keep saying I want to I want to get this out of my Arsenal watching head, but it's very difficult when it's thrown at you all single time. But my view on him is I just hope he has a good game. I really like the person. He's been a big part of our Arsenal watching life for a couple of years. He's been a
Mm.
big part of our ascent, shall we say. And it's a shame we didn't get a chance to play in the Champions League, and I hope that gets corrected, if I'm honest with you. And but yeah, all about Brentford. Have a good game, see what happens. Remind people that you can play football. Remind people. That's what I'll be saying to him. Remind people that you're not dead, and let it go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And you never know. But I hate when a player feels like they have one performance to like prove who they are, because you can't do that in a single performance, especially as a goalkeeper. And let's hope we don't even notice he's there. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That is the best thing I think that could happen for him. I want to finish up on this preview first, but we gotta do a couple of administrative things here with brands, because as you know, especially on Black Friday. If we didn't tell you about some brands, we would be derelict in our duty. Having said that, it's a short one today, so just a couple of quick ones for you. The first one, of course, is related to our friends at Manscaped. And it says here, I have to read this, Merry Ballsmas from our friends over at Manscaped. Not their best, if you ask me. But, it's their words, not mine. They do keep calm and let your balls jingle this season. They do all this stuff that like, frankly, I don't, it's in red. It means I have to read it. I don't know. I don't know what to say, but I do like the products. And by the way, I don't think Manscaped, Womanscaped, I think they could be both. I really do. Just a thought. Anywho, so the Manscaped Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle for the man who deserves it all. Including in this special sack is a Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer, Manscaped's liquid formulations, and 2 free gifts. The premium underwear, which I love, by the way, their boxers are great for workouts, and the Shed 2.0 toiletry bag to take with you when you travel. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is the best purpose-built body groomer shaver that I've ever used. It is a trimmer with 2 next-gen blade heads, standard trimming blade for taking a little off the top, and the new foil blade to go smooth to the finish. But I think the point is, like whatever you want to say about how silly the brand advertising is or whatever, we all do this. We all actually do this. We shave our body in various places, and we tend to use tools that we shouldn't be using, like a razor that's been in the shower for ages, or something that's dry and you can't do it in the shower, and so you're putting towels down that shake it. Forget it. Go in the shower, do it. Long battery life, wet dry, skin safe technology, so no avoid nicks and cuts, things like that. It's a great kit. Get the whole Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. Do the ears, do the nose, do the body. Get the boxers, get the Shed travel bag. You're going to love it. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com, and use code ArsenalVision. And then here's the part I read. Manscaped, get your jingle balls ready for the holidays. Okay, glad we did that. Now, we can finish off by simply telling you this. When you want to build the best team, you need the best talent. And when you want the best talent, you go into the transfer market. But if you're building a business, then you go with Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And it's really this simple. If I said to you, hey, I have an idea, you need to hire, why don't you open 42 web browsers and go on all the 42,000 different job sites and post your copy there and check every inbox and remember every login and go look at who's applying and pay for all the services? Or you can do one. You can do one, right? One that does it all. And with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed US data. I happen to like that Indeed is the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. You should pay for what you're trying to get. That sort of seems like a good trade-off. That's what you get with Indeed. And you can join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports and support the show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire Sports. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire, you need Clive. Done with it?
Indeed.
Edit. Okay. It's easy. Just so finishing off on the Brentford preview, I want you to pick the lineup, please.
Oh my goodness. Right, I'm going to go. Ramsdale, Tomiyasu, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Rice, Havertz, Odegaard, Saka, Jesus, Martinelli. But I'll be all right with Trossard. So that's a 50-50. 50-50.
So you think he'll go Rice, Odegaard, and Havertz?
Yeah, I'd like him to. And the reason why, we have a player here in Havertz that is the most fascinating, confusing, divisive player that's really come around for a long time. The fact that Nagelsmann trying to play him at left back, I think, is such an interesting wrinkle to this. He can play so many different positions that people don't know who he is, and I'm learning about him still. I'm learning that maybe ball progression is not his major thing, but he's a good runner, good athlete, reads the game off the ball, can hold up, post up, can do a number of things. Not good at ball progression. That's a certainty. However, With Odegaard coming back in, who is good at ball progression, who is ball dominant, it does allow for the third guy to be a more of an off the ball guy, which does lend to Havertz's strengths. If that's what we bought, if that was his position that we bought him for, and Odegaard is now back healthy and buzzing, and Jesus is coming into this group, let's have a look at it. The sooner we find out, the better. Let's have a look what happens when Jesus and Martinelli are around him in that left-hand slot, and he can basically move off them. And Odegaard is taking his ball progression away from him deeper in. Let's have a look, and I want to see it. I just want to see him make that midfield position work. And if it doesn't work, and the excuses of personnel not being there are gone, then we know. Then we know that maybe we need to use him as a centre forward. And that's it. And we make changes in the centre forward area to accommodate. Or we make changes if we say to ourselves, maybe that's not quite what we thought we was going to get, and we fail fast is the words that I used previously.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. But find out when everyone's back and healthy and ready to go. I don't think we've been able to find out yet because we haven't had a consistent forward unit of either health, fitness, availability. We haven't had it, but we're getting close to it in the stretch of games. So the sooner we find out, the better for me. And if that doesn't work, it doesn't work. Why I'm concerned about Elliot is I'm very patient with players, as you know, but I asked myself this question the other day and I was out walking. Is his best game good enough for us? Not when he's played average and okay. Is his best game that we've seen so far good enough? And I think he's got to extract his best game out so we can judge if he's going to be consistently good enough for us. There's a very useful player there, but does his best game cut it? Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, makes complete sense. I mean, look, it's pretty straightforward to me. I think we bought this guy to take what we were getting from that left 8 position and supercharge what can happen in the box from that position. And ironically, he's held up pretty well between the thirds in a way a lot of people thought he wouldn't.
Everywhere else but in the box.
Inside the box, he's been dreadful, unfortunately. So that's the part that has to come to the fore. I think it'll be Rice and Jorginho, though. I don't think he will start.
Yeah.
And I
I'm
think
just telling you
Havertz,
what I would do,
Yeah. For the time being, I think Havertz will be only starting games at home, comfortable games. And I don't know if that will ultimately lead to him putting forward the kind of performances where he graduates to the harder games. But for now, I think it is going to be Rice, Jorginho, and Odegaard for the foreseeable future. I think it'll be Martinelli and Saka. And then it's an interesting one. I mean, Nketiah was wrapped in cotton wool and hanging out at Colney in training. But it seems like in recent games, we've seen what happened sort of last season where Mikel finally felt he had to make a change to a more on-the-ball, build-up-y player in that number 9 position. And if it's not Jesus, I suspect it would be Trossard, who's been really good for us. So we'll see.
Yeah.
The thing we know, it's interesting. You look at Brentford, and even though, they've lost only once at home, they've drawn 3 times. Their actual, goals allowed isn't great. Defensively, they haven't been great at home, weirdly. They played a 5 against Liverpool away. They played a 4 the game before that against West Ham. I'm not really sure of their system. Do you have a suspicion about how they might go? I mean, I guess what we know we'll see is Mbeumo up front. They still like to go long, win that first ball, and try to play direct and with some pace. What do you think we'll see?
They're quite pacey in the wide areas, is what they are, and they're very set piece centric. I think they do change their shape. They're suffering with injury this year as well. See what's happened to Tony is a big problem for them. They've got a left back called Rico Henry, who I think would be in the last England squad if he was fit. He had a bad injury, and I think he's a major miss then because he's got so much go forward in the wide areas. And he just connects with their wide men really, really well. And I think Brentford in this strange year where they've had a major event losing their main centre forward through circumstances outside of on the pitch play, shall we say, and they've been able to accumulate points in the best way they can in a year when the bottom of the table is not great. So it's going to be so interesting to see what they do in January because I believe a couple of their forwards might go away to the African nation. So people are saying Tony's going to stay. Interesting to see how they react. Will they Will they just say, you know what, this has been a bad year, but we can do enough to stay away from the danger area. We'll reset and come back again stronger. We'll get our Raya money in. We'll get our Tony money in, and we'll go bang. Let's go again right now. Let's do our research in the market, which Brentford are excellent at, and let's go again to another season post Euros when they can be sitting there being really competitive. So I really like that club as a club. If you consider what they've done, their new ground, what they've achieved over the last few years. I look at them and I look at, say, a Bournemouth, who had many, many years in the Premier League. They haven't done their infrastructure. They haven't upgraded as they should have done. Eddie Howe kept me in that league way more times than they should have done. And they've not been able to grow their club, like whatever reason, like Brentford and Brighton have. And so I look at those two teams and think, yeah, you're going somewhere. You're trying to do it right. And of course, I don't want them to win, but I admire them. They're a classic Premier League club that's been grown out of an organisation and a funding model that's been really, really strong, but they've maximised it and they've future-proofed their club. They've got a system in place. They've got good analytics in place. Brighton and Brentford are a real example of what the Premier League can be. And I'd like to see both of them in Europe doing well and seeing how they represent the league based on their resource levels, etc. So a lot of admiration for them I have.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, one of the things, Bournemouth are sort of in that weird position where most seasons you'd say they're straddling, is the goal to just stay up or is the goal to push for one of those, new European Europa Conference League, Nations Cup thing. But, with Everton getting this 10-point deduction, like there are a lot of clubs like a Wolves, like a Brentford, maybe they're almost too good, I think, to be in that discussion. But Palace, that would have, at least for right now, been saying, let's focus on making sure we don't get sucked into the bottom three. Yeah. Given what Burnley look like and what Bournemouth look like and what Sheffield United look like and what Luton look like, and now Everton getting a 10-point deduction, those teams that might have just had a thought about that, they don't really have to think about that anymore. They could probably look up, not down. And that, I wonder if that changes.
They can start planning, can't they, a little bit? Yeah. And I think that's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah. So it might just change some of the calculus around what they do. Well, look, I think the thing we know is we'll probably have most of the ball and we'll probably give away very, very little. Will the attack fire? I'd like to see Jesus come in. I'd probably risk it. As I said, this is a very difficult fixture and it is the most difficult we have in the next 4 before we visit Villa. So I would go for it and put him out there and see what happens. Let's shift gears a bit. There's a couple other things that I want to make sure we cover. One of them is the City Liverpool game. So it's interesting. We did a pod on how worried we should be about Liverpool. Why we're not talking more about Liverpool. And this is there. We had our game against City at home, to be fair, where the eyes were on us. And it was very tactical and it was very, chess oriented and we nicked it. This is Liverpool's chance to say, hey, remember us? We used to go toe-to-toe with these guys. And, for many years, we looked at Liverpool and City games and said, could you imagine ever being involved in a game at that high level? Well, now we are. But it's their turn. It's their turn to be on the stage. And I think a lot of people are going to look at it as a bit of a referendum on just how serious they are, which, of course, is ridiculous when you do that in any single game. But that's just how these things work. What are you expecting from this game? Because I don't see Liverpool being able to play a game against City like we played, where it's all about control and, keeping each other at arm's length and poking and prodding and looking for space. I think Liverpool really are only able to play a little bit more back to front. We saw City get dragged into one of those kind of games against Chelsea where it was, basketball. Do you think this could be another game that looks a little bit like that, or will City avoid falling into that trap?
I think it's so interesting that how many players pulled out of internationals for City. I think they pulled Rodri out. Haaland was out.
It always happens.
Yeah. Ederson had a bit of a problem. He was pulled out. Nathan Ake missed the games pre-international break. So he's sitting there with his legs up. Hey, look, they know when to get serious. And when they get serious, they just pull people out of squads. Yeah, and let's see who's available. I do think, I haven't read these articles yet, but there's been a number of articles over the break about injuries. And I've seen the headline and thought, I've got to get to them. I haven't got to them yet, so I shouldn't have even mentioned it. But the injury issues that top clubs are facing are becoming really, really apparent and people are rushing to conclusions based on teams they're seeing, not based on the teams that could appear when everyone's back fit. Arsenal fans included, we just are forgetting that we have got some key people not available. Newcastle suffered badly. Manchester United suffered badly. Liverpool seem to be okay. City are on the edge. Obviously, they've got some major players. That their best players not available, shall we say. And so managing injury, managing changing in lineups are going to be key. A key player for City is John Stones. And Elliot, this guy, I've been a huge fan of him for many, many years. This guy is the guy that solidifies them alongside Rodri, and he allows them that flexibility in their back five. And when he's not there, they played Rico Lewis against us, remember? And good Rodri was out. I think they had Bernardo in there as well. It didn't work. They don't seem to fancy Calvin Phillips at all, not even at these moments. So it's interesting to see how they solidify the base. I would do what Chelsea did to Rodri. I would run at him consistently. I would run all around him and spin him off the dance floor, mate. I would spin his head around. And because as soon as you destabilise him, you destabilise them. They can see 4 goals in a game. That is not Man City like. Liverpool have the team and have the energy in that central area to do very similar to what Chelsea did if they keep the ball where they want it to be, which used to be a Liverpool trick. Can they do that at Man City? Well, Man City haven't lost at home since the French Revolution, right? So I don't know when they lost at home in the league. And so basically, they don't tend to lose these games. They have a flaw that basically means they compete every single time. So it'd be interesting to see what Liverpool do. And also, be honest with you, Liverpool have slightly gone under the radar a little bit. Because people have been looking at them. They're playing McAllister at 6. Is it really working? Number of midfield combinations. Is it really working? There's a bit of a Liverpool 2.0 going on, a bit of a rebuild. Suddenly, the light's on them. Saturday morning, first game back, Premier League. We're going to have a good look at them. Everyone's been looking at Spurs. They're new. Looking at Chelsea. They're interesting. Lots of new players. Arsenal, well, let's just keep them where they are. Let's see if they can manage the Champions League and the Premier League. But we don't really like them, but we'll keep an eye on them. We expect them to be in the top 3, which is a great step forward anyway. And Man City, and they just could do what they do. We ignore them. So now Liverpool are going to come into the light. And it's going to be interesting to see how they cope, what they're able to do. And will the light be shining on them after this game? Will it be positive or will it be negative? If they lose the game, no one's gonna stress too much. We go and win our game. We take a bit of a jump. If they get points, it's going to really push them into being a serious contender. Just emotionally and mentally, people will look at them differently, perception-wise. And how it's going to impact Arsenal is going to be so interesting. If we just win our game, we are right in there, aren't we? We're right in there, and we have a run of games that we can do something with. So, I do think it's time for Liverpool to come out of the show people what you've got, and see if you can manage Man City. Chelsea have shown it. Arsenal have shown it. Man United didn't show it, although City had the help of the first goal penalty. Let's see what Liverpool can do.
Yeah, I can't tell you that I'm excited to watch it, given that it's at 6:30 local time a.m.
You getting up?
I will be getting up to watch it. Yeah, I think it's one of those things you gotta see it live. Interesting, that loss at home in the league in the French Revolution. A lot of people forget this, but their striker Robespierre had gone back to France to foment revolution, and that was really a destabilizing influence for them. So it's a huge weekend, and I think this is why I would potentially risk a Gabriel Jesus if there's any possibility to do it, because Newcastle host Chelsea, Tottenham host Villa, United go to Everton, City host Liverpool. There's just, I mentioned United just for fun, but it's a weekend where we could not only wind up at the top of the table when it's all said and done, but having seen everybody in that cluster have fallen back a bit. And I look at it, then you go, as I mentioned, from a game like that to hosting Wolves, who have actually been pretty interesting, and going to Luton. And I know there are no easy games in the league, but this is the one at Brentford where on this particular weekend, you can set yourself up really well for this 10-game run in 36 days. By the way, I think it is crazy to think, but we are just, was it the 24th today? December 6th is how many days from now? About 13. So we're just 13 days away from Erik ten Hag being sacked, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. As they lose at Everton on Sunday, then lose at Newcastle on the 2nd, and then lose at home to Chelsea in front of a booing Old Trafford crowd that sees Erik ten Hag sacked and leaving in disgrace at the beginning of December, thereby beating my timeline of thinking he'd be out around Christmas time. So that'll be interesting when that happens. So looking forward to that. Now, let me just finish by saying this, Clive. It is 10 games in 36 days. And we are going to have to use the squad. I mean, there's no getting around it. That it's going to be an interesting time. Is there a player you think we might find in this period, or play? It's real. It's interesting how careers can turn, because it sounds like Emil Smith-Rowe now has an injury that's going to keep him out to the new year. And of course, this would be a period he'd be looking to play. A Vieira, a Reece Nelson, are these guys who should be looking at this period and saying, I can influence this? I mean, we can't be putting Jorginho out every 3 days for 36 straight days, I wouldn't think. So obviously Havertz will have plenty of chances to play, but is this the moment for like a Nelson, for a Kivior, for a Vieira? Who are the players who might come to the fore and might reestablish themselves in this period, if anyone?
Well, funny enough, I tweeted something out about this earlier on. I think the two players in the last period that stepped out were Trossard and Tomiyasu. They were the two players that stepped out. Then we have, so what we've got coming up, Kivior suspended for 3 games because he kung fu kicked someone on their knee in the last game. So he's out. So, sorry, did I say that right? I said Vieira. Did I say Kivior? I might have said
you said Kivior. Yeah, it's Vieira. Sorry.
Yeah, it's Vieira, sorry. Vieira's out at a time when he should be playing. Interesting to see if he gets European time in the meantime, to take people's legs off. That may suit him in the home games, but we shall see. So the players that I'm looking at, I've got there's 2 players I'm looking at, strangely enough. And one I've already mentioned, Havertz, and the other is Kivior. And I think we have a player there that really seems to be attracting attention, in Italy in particular, but I think needs to play. I even thought about putting in my team for the weekend, only because it's Brentford and they're quite physical in the air. There's enough games. It's not drama. If you don't play one game, you're playing 3 days later. So could Kivior play left back, Tomiyasu right back? I'm only saying that because White potentially hasn't trained yet. White could play. Tomiyasu could play left back. Zinchenko could play. It doesn't bother me. We're starting to get a group of players that are very fungible. If Trossard plays or Jesus plays, I don't think there'll be a world war on Twitter. Would there really? There wouldn't be. We just want to see him play. So I'm looking at Kivior to have much more minutes in these games. I think he deserves it. I want to see someone else step up, like Trossard has and like Tomiyasu has. Who's going to step up? So in the last game, Zinchenko stepped up in that game. All his numbers were off the charts, right? So he reacted to the fact he sat down for a couple of weeks. So I'm looking at players like that, in Havertz in particular, and maybe Kivior, to really see what they can do in this period of games to allow other people to sit and rest up, or even just share the minutes. It doesn't worry me. Now, I have this little issue, Elliot, and think about this. When we're thinking about upgrading and trading, I keep coming back to the same names. I keep coming back to some of our Hale Enders, which I don't really like, in Smith-Rowe, Nelson, and Eddie. And these players are very important to our club and what we represent, and being players that come through our system. But I find myself looking at them and saying, are we getting quite enough? I could be totally unfair, by the way. And I'm open to that criticism. But I keep coming back to that place. And then I think, well, actually, they're very important to our identity as an English club. Now, if they are to go, then what happens? How do we rebuild that identity a little bit? Are we going to get other players coming through our youth system? I'm projecting ahead to next summer, for example, but I'd rather we not have those thoughts, because those players are really doing something for us. If you're looking at people to step up, I'd love to see those 3 really step up, have their moment, whether it's finishers or whatever, I don't really mind, but just have their moment in this side when it really counts. Like Nelson had his moment last year. I want more of that. There's enough games for all of them. more of that, and let's see what happens. I'd love to see a couple of tail enders step up and really stick it back to me, if you know what I mean, because I've got a few doubts.
Yep. Well, I'll be very curious to see who Mikel trusts, because inevitably he'll have to rotate a bit. I think the irony is the player that we might see how much he trusts more than anyone is Kai, just because I don't think playing Rice and Jorginho and Odegaard every 3 days is going to work. I think Jorginho fits some games, maybe not all of them. So Havertz should play a lot, and we'll see if he's able to get in some kind of rhythm and prove that he can make that position his. So we'll see what happens. Let's finish though on a topic that has been doing the rounds a little bit. There was a Premier League vote on interested party transactions in the January window. So there's a permanent resolution that's required to determine whether clubs should be allowed to transact loans between themselves and related parties. There was a measure that was put forward about this for January specifically, this upcoming window. Not even a permanent measure, just for January, just to get it in place for this upcoming window before they revisited it with a permanent vote in the summer. The measure was voted down, meaning that you can now have loans between interested parties. And the clubs that voted against it all have interested party transactions that they may engage in or may benefit from. And those clubs were Burnley, Chelsea, Everton, Newcastle, Forest City, Sheffield United, and Wolves. Every one of those clubs, either part of a multi-club model or have related clubs that they may transact some kind of business with. I could dig into them individually one at a time and explain each, related party, but there's plenty of articles out there. A lot of ink has been spilled, and you can certainly look it up. Clive, I don't want to go too high up onto the high horse about this, but it's one of those things where, again, you say, how do you wind up lurching to something like a Super League? You lurch towards something like that by removing any kind of safeguards or rules that allow for an even playing field. I think in any sporting environment, what you want, it doesn't matter what the rules are. It really doesn't. But they have to be consistent and benefit everybody at least, or give the opportunity for everyone to benefit equally. I have felt for a long time that some of the financial controls are not equal, because actually what they're meant to do is keep the smaller clubs out, right? Because their revenues are smaller, and so they can spend less, and they can never get up to the level of the bigger clubs. It was a moat. It was pulling up the drawbridge in a way. The problem with this stuff is when you do things that create an unequal playing field, that do not allow everyone to benefit equally, then you have clubs within the same organization at odds with each other about how the sporting balance should be set. It's really very simple. These kinds of transactions are, in my view, the most nakedly corrupt, nakedly unequitable kinds of transactions that can take place. You don't have to stretch your imagination too far to understand it. A Saudi club could buy Kylian Mbappe, for God's sakes, pay him £500,000 a week and loan him to Newcastle and agree to pay 80% of the wages. I mean, I get that that's out in the extreme of the example, but the Ruben Neves transaction itself is, you have a problem, you need something, here, let us help you. It basically becomes a reserve of players that you can pull from that other clubs can't. And I just feel, Clive, that once you threaten the competitive balance, once you take the playing field and say to all the participants on the playing field it's not equal, then you don't have a league anymore. And this is a league that is loosely centrally organized. It is not organized around the principles of like American leagues, where there is an organizing body and the leagues are the clubs are members of it. Really, the clubs run the league. And in fact, this is proven by the idea that a Burnley, who almost certainly will not be in this league next season, and Nottingham Forest, who may also very well not be in this league next season, who are sort of interlopers at this point, are voting down a measure that it will impact the league going forward. So how do you feel about this vote, the competitive balance, and, the need for some kind of central authority that balances the playing field, levels the playing field between these clubs?
Yeah, independent regulation. It's a lovely word, isn't it? Well, two words even.
Scares me.
What does that mean? Who's going to be the regulator? Who's going to make up that group? What's going to be their interests? And at the moment, we've got 20 clubs that are fighting desperately for their own interests. And it's worrying, Elliot. It's worrying because the multi-club model, I look at that in itself and think, that's quite an interesting thing. If you can, with your assets, when you have a player come in, let's not pretend we have a player come in, like say a Vieira, and he hasn't quite hit the ground running. But if we had another club in France we could drop him to for a year, then he comes in and then he hits the ground. The concept from the football side of things is really quite good. But when you think about how that can be used in a negative way to maybe circumnavigate some financial fair play discussions, as you alluded to with Ruben Neves, then you say to yourself, hold on a minute here. We got teams that have got different teams behind them, different relationships. That's a hole in the wall. And how are we going to fit it? We're not sure how we're going to fit it. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a temporary ban in place. And they voted against that. So it tells you everything you need to know. This is about now. This is about winning. This is about an extremely competitive environment. And people are not thinking medium to long term. Even with our own sales, we're not perfect, right? So we probably lost a point at Newcastle. Let's be honest, it's 0-0 draw. We lost a point at Newcastle. But we were very angry about that because that point could be incredibly valuable, incredibly valuable. And to me and you, a point that we get back, but we might not get it back. And it could mean something significant. It could mean something for people's careers and how they're perceived. And so it's very difficult for us, two blokes in hoodies, right, talking about Arsenal Football Club. And we love it dearly. And we love football dearly. But we don't live how they live. We don't live with the extreme pressures. We don't live in a world where there's so much money sloshing around that really does concern me. The levels of finance around the game are significant, where states are now involved, where the money is endless. This is going to drive people maybe to take decisions which are above their pay grade, and clubs could get into trouble. And we've seen this before. This is a podcast in itself, and it really is. It's a podcast in itself. What I will say is, I spent a bit of time in the women's game lately watching that because there's no men's game. And there's a lovely purity about the women's game at the moment. It just feels so clean and so pure. When some of the men's game stuff feels so dirty, it feels so edgy. I want to get back to watching Arsenal big time to get the joy back. But it does feel as though off the pitch, we could be heading to a place that I'm not sure who's going to control it. And where we started this podcast off talking about Mikel Arteta's behaviour, it feels so inconsequential to some of the decisions that are being taken off the pitch at the moment around the financial side of things with Everton, around this decision, the multi-club model decisions. And that's before we go back to the table for the next Sky deal, for the next TV deal. Not all the countries are getting the TV deals that they want to get. This is one to watch, mate. It is really one to watch. And I'm genuinely not sure how this is going to go. It could go. I'm not sure about independent regulation, but we need something. Because at the moment, the people the loudest voices in our game are pundits. And that's not what should be happening. They are not elected officials.
Yeah, I'll confess my own, and this is just me, my own distrust of a government regulator stepping in over a global sporting organization, that touches fans all over the world and players from different nationalities. And obviously politicians have their own interests in terms of who they want to benefit. And, with the MP from Greater Manchester have a different idea about how it should be regulated than the MP from a northern part of London or what, of course they're going to have all kinds of different ideas about how it should be regulated. I think what I find with football is it is a weird structure versus what I'm used to in the sporting structures in the US, for example, because the FA is the steward of the game in England, and the FAs are, around the world in their own nation. The Premier League runs its league, but the FA is the steward of the game. But the FA doesn't have an interest in the league. And the clubs come and go from the league and have different interests from one another, disparate interests because of their ownership models and things. And so there is only the loosest bond. It is like a loose federation rather than a tight-knit organization. And I think if you don't get stronger central leadership in the Premier League that is independent in and of itself from the individual club owners and ownership models, you have a problem. Because the ownership groups and their interests are becoming increasingly disparate. And then you stop having an organization. And what winds up happening is some of these clubs start saying, well, let's form one organized around the same fundamental principles and goals that we all have on
But we'll just
spending, on
de-risk it.
transactions.
We'll de-risk it for ourselves as
That's what the
owners.
Super League was about, right?
Yep.
And by the way, I am not in favor of a Super League, to be clear. I'm saying that we drive ourselves in that direction with every one of these moments football has where the clubs and the FAs and the league and the fans seem totally out of sync with one another in terms of their incentives and their their goals.
And the Super League was sort of ill thought of, but for me, it was never the construct of the Super League. The thing that really was interesting for me was what drove the thinking. What drove the thinking, and that if you've gone there, what's made people go there? And for me, it's risk. The risk that these owners carry, the risk that football carries. And yes, the Premier League has woken up this week and clipped Everton 10 points. That just feels like, whoa, it feels a bit heavy. Where's that come
They
from?
might be looking at Spurs next.
Yeah, well, that feels a bit loosey-goosey, that one does. But, where are we suddenly trying to wake up and be tough guys now? When you allowed Chelsea to run roughshod over this league for 20 years? When you allowed the Newcastle takeover to happen? And what Man City have done with their lack of fair value, shall we say, around their sponsorships. And don't tell me it doesn't work. I just saw a graph today around shirts being sold around the world. And Man City have sold more shirts than Arsenal. Just those words alone, 15 years ago, just would not have made sense. The historic global clubs are at the top still. But Man City have sold more shirts than Arsenal around the world. And it doesn't take much to circumnavigate history. You think, they'll never be as big as Man United. Well, mate, their revenue is going to be unbelievable this year. Of course they will be. And they may not have the global fan base, but they're right there. They're right there. And that's down to what they can do with their funding, etc. So the demographic of football has completely changed, and it will continue to change unless there is a stronger body. But Elliot, I'll be honest with you, football is the global soap opera. Who is truly independent? Who is truly strong enough, apart from the strong clubs themselves, to hold themselves to account? I'm not so sure. I'm generally not so sure, but it's very worrying. It's very worrying.
Yeah, and ultimately, look, you talked about the purity in the women's game. I think it's really this simple. As money grows, purity decreases.
That will change.
And I mean, all you have to do is look at the biggest organization. Is FIFA pure? I don't think anyone would say FIFA's pure. Is UEFA pure? No, I think we know they're not. And are the clubs and are the FAs? And you could just go down the line. As the money grows, the opportunity for self-interest and grift and corruption grows. And so,
and also
I think this
also the microscope by which you look at the game changes as it becomes more appealing. There's more money. There's more people. There's more stars being developed. The way you look at it differs. You become more interested. You have more engagement. Then the perception changes. How I look at Arsenal today compared to 10 years ago is completely different. I've got so much information at my fingertips. I have so much transparency. I am connected to. I've got friends that live in different parts of the world due to watching Arsenal Football Club and sharing moments together. How I look at it, the window by which I look at the game, has just transformed itself. Right. So I want to try to keep some perspective here. Because everyone's looking so closely, we all think something is busted. It's not busted. We should take care of it. We need to
Mhm.
take care of it. And that needs to be maybe a we thing and maybe not such a tribal thing. We need to take care
Yeah.
of something that's really special. And I'm not so sure that some people are.
Yeah, you just gotta be careful. You gotta be a little bit careful because if people start to scratch their head and say, "How did this player wind up at this place?" Or "These calls that I keep seeing in games don't make sense," or "How did this transfer happen? That feels shady." And people
Mm,
just stop feeling like, makes it, well, why did we get docked points and they didn't get docked points? This guy get and like if it starts to not feel equitable, if it starts to not feel consistent, if you lose that ability to explain it and it starts to feel more like WWE than football, when you feel that there's someone pulling the strings behind the scenes and that there's a script being followed or a sort of invisible hand guiding the outcomes,
yeah.
that does threaten the game. And so I think where there needs to be care and caution is just making sure that when we all sit down to watch a game, whether it's halfway around the world or there at the ground, that we trust that the outcome is being fairly contested between 22 footballers, right, who control their destiny on the pitch, and that playing field is level, at least to the extent that look, there'll be haves and have-nots. I'm not saying there won't be, but I just want to make sure we reach that. And it's funny, right? Because this is why international breaks are bad in a way. We start to think about things that we don't really want. We don't want to look under the
Yes.
rug. I tell my daughter to clean her room, and I'll go up and her room is super clean. I just can't look under the bed. I can't pull the sheets back. I can't open the closet door. It's clean as long as I don't do that. It's when we get these breaks, Clive, to look under the rug and open the closet door and pull back the sheets that it gets. You say, "Ooh, I didn't want to look at that."
Yeah, exactly. And you took the words out of my mouth. I literally going to say something similar, which probably follows what we need is a few more really good games of football to remind us why we all love this game. You know, we need that. The last game that stuck in my mind was the 4-4 City Chelsea game. A really good game of football. I think we need to get back to doing that. And from an Arsenal perspective, let's have some really good games, create some really good memories, and try not to worry about some of the things outside of our control and focus on our own selves and making sure we're not in the dock, apart from our age of saying how things are embarrassing, etc.
Yeah, well said. All right. Well, look, I am extremely excited for football to be back. It is a very long weekend here in the U.S. It's a wonderful time of year as we get into the holidays. There's so much football. We could say goodbye to international breaks. We won't have time to worry about the health of the game because we'll be watching so much football. So that's a good thing. And we can just enjoy Arsenal collecting points at an historic pace as Gabriel Jesus comes back and fixes everything. I mean, what a time of year, right? December seems like the right time of year for Jesus to return and fix all the problems in our Arsenal world. There's something poetic about that, regardless of what you believe and what you support. So we'll leave it there. I hope everyone's doing well. Clive, thank you so much. Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. Gunner data review is either out, depending on when you're listening to this, or will be out momentarily. So check that out. We'd love to have you over on Patreon. But more than anything, we just love that you are joining us to listen to us chat shit about football and Arsenal. Thank you so much for being here. We love you. Can't wait to watch the football tomorrow and talk to you about it on the Instant Reaction. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Brentford 0.